Right, let's give you the situation on the ground as it stands. Wits University's Student Representative Council has called for a national shutdown of all institutions of higher learning. Now, the student body is leading ongoing protests at the university over those registration issues. Yesterday, the protest took quite a tragic turn when a 35-year-old man lost his life after allegedly being shot by police. Newzroom Afrika's Zikhona Tshona is in Braamfontein for us this morning and joins us now live. Zikhona, the streets where you are now are much calmer than they were just a few hours ago, yesterday afternoon or so. Perhaps it's worth just going through the timeline about what happened and how we got here.
We are actually on De Beer Street here in Braamfontein. This is where the tragic incident took place, right outside this clinic. A man in South Africa yesterday visited a clinic and never returned home. After leaving the doctor's room, shots were heard coming from the street, and shortly thereafter, he took his last breath. Right before me, when we arrived at the scene, his body was still lying here, covered in foil. We spoke to the doctor yesterday, shortly after the incident, and he described the kind of injuries that the 35-year-old man sustained. He spoke about a hole in his chest and an injury to his head. What happened yesterday shocked everyone here in the streets of Braamfontein. The streets were packed with people just trying to see exactly what was happening. Now, of course, as you've mentioned, the Student Representative Council of Wits University is leading ongoing protests around this area with regards to their registration issues. So we expect the protesting to continue today. But what will be very interesting to see is the police presence and the force, so the kind of response that the police will have to the students' protest. Already driving to the street, we've seen outside Wits University there is already heavy security presence, but for now it just appears that it is the campus security that is situated around the campus. But students have vowed that they will continue protesting. What we saw yesterday, Ayanda, was very sad. And throughout the day, students sat on the street, taking to the knee and saying that they are now united in mourning for the man who lost his life after they were protesting here. How the protest got to this street is that the students were protesting on the corner of Jan Smuts Avenue and Jorrison Drive. After they were burning tires, police started firing rubber bullets, and students then dispersed to several streets here in Braamfontein, and this is one of the streets that they would have come and run to. But of course, Braamfontein is a busy town, and there were several people that happened to be caught up in that when police were firing those rubber bullets. The police were coming from that direction. The man was walking out of this clinic, and his body was lying on this pavement. And I think everyone who saw what we saw yesterday was left very shaken. Even the students themselves, who became eyewitnesses to those scenes, found it very difficult to describe what they saw. But they vowed now to continue protesting, and they said yesterday that the police have declared a war. Many of them kept on repeating that they came here to protest armed only with their student cards, but they were met with guns.
Yeah, and it was certainly sobering reflections, that, Zikhona. It was a moment that really inflamed the situation, increased frustration, and at some point, some of that anger was even directed at the media.
Certainly, I think in their frustration, the students just took out their anger on anyone who was seemingly frustrating them or came in their way of what they were trying to achieve. Because for most of the part, after what happened, they stopped talking to the media, saying that they will only speak once the police communications officials from the Gauteng Police Department come here and explain to them exactly what happened and how a man was killed allegedly by police. What we also saw is students pushing the police away, saying that they don't want them here, and shouting that you have killed someone, and why did this happen? So they were demanding answers, and particularly from Wits University, asking why Wits had to use the police force in these protests. Was that the necessary kind of response needed? Because given the number of students that were protesting at the time, it's not as big as Fees Must Fall, because many students are not on campus currently. So it's a relatively small crowd of students that was protesting yesterday. So did we need the force that was used yesterday in response to the students' protests? But today, it will be interesting to see how today will play out. How will the police respond should students take to the streets again? Because what they are doing in their protest, as part of their protest, is that they are moving to several campuses of Wits University and protesting outside the gates. But yesterday, they did not even manage to do that. The altercation happened shortly after they left the main campus of Wits University, so the students didn't get very far. Their protest was cut short, and thereafter, after the body was removed, they then took to the streets again to protest outside the university.
Yeah, so very quickly, Zikhona, the students now vowing to up the ante today in the form of some kind of national agenda. Any details on how they plan to achieve that?
So the students have called for a national shutdown of all institutions of higher learning. They're saying that all students are currently facing the same registration issues in terms of accessing funds via NSFAS. Many of them have historical debt and can't register. What is interesting about this protest is that they've also included the voices of TVET colleges. So we would have seen yesterday that the protests here also included Johannesburg Central TVET College. So they're calling on all institutions of higher learning to join them in this protest. We know that the University of Pretoria students are have already said that they will be joining Wits University in this protest. So we'll wait and see how wide it will spread, because we know with Fees Must Fall, it started in one university and it became a national shutdown.
Right, Zikhona Tshona, live to us there from the streets of Braamfontein, a much calmer situation, might I add, in stark contrast to the scenes that we saw playing themselves out just a few hours ago in the middle part of the afternoon yesterday, for lack of a better term.
What a powerful description there from Zikhona Tshona, saying that students arrived on the streets yesterday to protest armed only with their student cards.
Right.